photographs on the bus in regard to Eisenhower. Here's a photo of him in front of one of the tanks. It was used here at Camp Colt. This photograph was actually taken at Fort George Gordon Meade in Maryland, appropriately enough. Once again, the hands are behind his back. He's self-conscious. He doesn't want you to see him.
Is that his wife in the tank?
I know. I know. Here's another photograph of the Marine Corps demonstration, 1922. This is in the vicinity of the Kadori Farm, which we passed, near the spot where General Pickett watched the assault moving forward on July 3rd. On the Gettysburg Road in front of the Kadori Farm, and these are the Marines firing live rounds from a water-cooled machine gun up toward Cemetery Ridge. Great safety practice. They had people that were watching. Yes, they did. They were firing into the ridge.
Oh, they were. Okay.
Yeah, that's how they were doing it. Skipping ahead, 1954. This is the dedication of the Camp Colt plaque. We can't see Eisenhower in this photo, but we know he's there because we can see some of his Secret Service agents skulking around in the crowd. The only young people wearing sunglasses. Yeah, very inconspicuous. And then finally, here's a few months after they planted the tree in one of the park ranges. You can see how much smaller it is back in the 1950s. Yeah, still a good size at that time, yeah. And that's why that tree stands there. That's why it hasn't been torn down, part of the restoration process, because it fits within the interpretive timeline that the park delves into. Okay, well, a little bit further up the road, as I noted on the bus, right next to General Pickett's buffet there used to be located a motel called the Home Sweet Home Motel. Some of you may remember it, some of you may have stayed there on family vacations in the past. It was torn down in the year 2000 as part of the landscape restoration. It was one of the first modern buildings to come down on the outskirts of the battlefield. The Home Sweet Home Motel is actually the headquarters for the prisoner of war camp, as it is being operated next door. And Joanne Thomas, who was the daughter of the camp commandant, Lawrence Thomas, lived there at the hotel. Some of the families lived with the officers on site, and she offered some pretty good testimony about how things were going down there. She said, "We were quite fascinated by the Germans, the youngest being about 13, and the oldest was about 65. They would get their exercise by walking around the camp and played soccer constantly. And so naturally, these local women are very much intrigued by the Germans. Keep in mind that all the young men of military age are overseas. And if they want to be spectators to, pieces of flesh running around, so to speak, they all go to the prisoner of war camp." And so she would go on to say, let's see here. They come out here and see the prisoners sunbathing, eating ice cream, playing soccer, and things of that nature. I get the feeling that these women were not only curious, but lonely. Okay. And so Captain Thomas, he also commented on this abundance of women visiting the camp. He said, "The nuisance of women loitering about the camp has let up considerably, but an alert lookout is being maintained to prevent reoccurrence of the habit of many women driving to and remaining near the camp site." And so, once again, this is just what an Army captain wants to be doing, playing chaperone to a bunch of Gettysburg women and German prisoners of war who are eating ice cream, playing soccer, and all that sort of good stuff.
I want to go back to Germany.
Yeah. But to put it mildly, a lot of Germans made friends with locals in the area. And geographically and culturally speaking, this too makes sense, considering that we are in Pennsylvania Dutch country. A lot of people still speak German. Sometimes civilians work alongside these POWs in the canneries and orchards to the north of Gettysburg. And in fact, some of them have come back in the years since to visit friends that they made while they lived and worked here and toured the battlefield and things like that. The last one that came through here was in 2009, believe it or not. But earlier we discussed Captain Thomas's various problems in managing the camp. And earlier I mentioned that several escape attempts are going to take place. And interestingly enough, one of them is going to take place on July 3rd, 1944, the 81st anniversary of Pickett's charge. There are going to be 2 prisoners of war who escaped through a culvert that went underneath the Emmitsburg Road. So it was, like a sewage, water runoff culvert, what have you, that connected the camp with the west side of the Emmitsburg Road. And 2 prisoners, Thomas Kostaniak, Axel Ostermauer, aged 27 and 22, they escaped, they hightailed it, and this in turn leads to a military police and FBI manhunt in Gettysburg National Military Park. They know these guys are out here, and the Gettysburg Times had the very humorous headline, or right underneath the title of their paper. It said, "Good evening. If you see the escaped Nazi POWs, please tell the police." Stating the obvious, of course. And so what we have is a 2-state manhunt going over multiple counties. These guys can't speak English. They don't have money. They're wearing blue denims with PW stamped on them, standing for prisoner of war. And eventually, a farmer in nearby York to the east lures them into his kitchen with food because they didn't have any food with them. And while they're at his kitchen table chowing down, he calls the police on them, and that's where the FBI apprehends them. So I hope they at least got some good Pennsylvania Dutch cooking before they were sent back to their camp. There are various other escapes that tried to take place. Another prisoner named Wilhelm Schmidt. Doesn't get more German than that, does it? They didn't even realize until he went missing, until he turned himself into the FBI office in Brooklyn. I guess he got to the Atlantic Ocean and figured, well, where do I go from here? And he turned himself in. Another story, some of the escape attempts were more innocent in nature. 2 MPs were walking down on the town square one evening. They were walking in front of the Plaza Tavern, which is now the Blue and Gray pub downtown, and they noticed these 2 oddly dressed guys sitting on the sidewalk smoking cigarettes and sipping beer, and they're wearing these blue denim, work uniforms that were typical of fatigue dresses during World War II. And they walked over, asked these guys who they were, what they were doing, why they were there, and the 2 guys replied back in German. Apparently they escaped just because they wanted a cold one downtown after they were working. So security's a little bit lax here at times. And certainly Captain Thomas is always trying to put up with all of this.